Hello, everybody. I am so excited for today's Just Own You Summit interview. It is with Becky Proudfit. She is one of those women that you're like, how do you do everything? And we're going to find that out today. She has a wildly successful podcast. It's called the Cultivate a Good Life podcast. She loves helping women own their own journey and story, which is what we're all about here on the Just Own You Summit. She is a cancer survivor, an author, a mother, a coach, and we could probably list on for the rest of the day all the things that she does in one day. And she recently started homeschooling and virtual schooling her kids. So we picked the best possible person for today's interview, and I'm so glad she's here with us.
Thank you so much for having me, man. That was awesome. If I'm ever having a day where I'm not feeling great about my efforts, I can remember today.
Yeah, just pull up Jessica again on the interview.
Mm-hmm. That's what we'll do.
Fabulous. Well, I forgot to mention, which is one of the things I want her to take back and talk about on her highlight reel.
Mm-hmm.
She has an extensive background working with Walt Disney. So she knows all branding. And I think one of the things I want you to touch on is branding ourselves. Like, who are we? So kind of take us on a short journey of where Becky Proudfit came from. All the things like, how did you come to this point?
Yes. Well, I will say that it seems, looking back, that it all makes sense. And while I was in it, I had no idea that this was where the road was headed. One of the biggest lessons for me as I have moved throughout business and returning to working is that I need to be patient. I get very ambitious. And I realize that I can really do anything that I want to, and I truly believe that. So it's more for me about honing in, looking inside, and seeing what are the areas where I feel like my voice is valuable, establishing what is my voice, and making sure that I focus my efforts so that I'm not spinning my wheels and so that I'm not burning out.
Yeah.
Which is huge. So I was raised in upstate New York. While I was at college, I was walking through the quad and I saw a recruiter for Disney, and I was like, I can have a Disney internship? Like, that seemed like magic. I could get school credit for this. And so I was able to go down to Disney World in Florida and to do an internship for Disney. So I was on the first team that kind of created and implemented the very first fast pass machines into the park.
Oh my goodness.
It was pretty exciting. Kind of dates me. I tell my kids that and they're like, I can't believe how old you are, Mom. But then as I was nearing the end of my internship, I was able to move into the entertainment division. And then I was a character performer for Disney. So I got to be a Disney princess, which was so fun, and really got to see the inner workings of the brand. And that was kind of the very beginning of my interest in corporate culture and brand consistency, was seeing how Disney operated. And they're such a stellar company. And watching that just made me really super interested in that. After I left Disney, I moved to the West Coast, got married. I have 4 kids and kind of started my, I guess, domestic life in that way. When my kids were little, I really wanted to stay home with them like my mom was able to do for me, which was amazing and extremely challenging all at the same time. And I kind of felt like I was in this place where I could totally say like I had lost myself in motherhood. And I think when I was in that place, that might have been the narrative I was reinforcing in my life. Now looking back, I realized that I didn't have enough information about myself to even know how to exist in that space without losing myself. And so as I kind of came out of that, some more crazy stuff happened. I got cancer, went through a cancer journey. And in the middle of that journey, I had always felt like I needed to write a book. And I had like gotten that little nudging in my soul, and I pushed it down and pushed it down. And as I went through cancer, I felt really strongly like I needed to share my story. And as soon as I was done with that, I was approached to co-host the podcast. And I kind of thought I was just dipping my toes in again. I had been doing a lot of public speaking about owning your story and what my story was. And thought I would dip my toes back in with the podcast, and we launched it and it exploded. It just went bananas. And so that was about 2 years ago. So since then, I've authored a children's book. I'm working on another book. I do a lot of speaking. I do a lot of coaching. The coaching part is pretty new. I have online courses, kind of the whole range of everything. So I say it happened kind of accidentally, and yeah, that is where I'm at today.
I totally on purpose, everybody, that this Becky has this beautiful story. And she's one of those people that I have just recently met. And I'm like, yep, want to be her neighbor in the backyard. Seriously, because these kind of women you want to be around. If you can't physically be around them, I listen to Becky's podcast. I want her in my ears because of the amazing content she brings. And that's why I wanted her here today. Your journey is beautiful. I want the women that we're talking to, specifically mompreneurs, to own their story, to embrace their talents, and to, like, literally what you say is give permission to yourself, like be you. How help, what advice, what do you give when you coach, when you speak in your books, etc., when you teach women be yourself?
So I think we are very lucky in this day and age. There's so many podcasts and books, access to media, and we hear a lot of like self-help catchphrases like live the story you want to tell, and owning yourself, and living out loud, and authenticity, and what all of this means. And I think the first step is really establishing the narratives that are happening in your life. So for instance, if I look back to my early motherhood, that I would say was a harder time in my life, I totally was reinforcing a narrative that I had lost myself in motherhood. And everything I did kind of played into that. And so that kind of became a little bit of who I was. So the first step is really stopping to be intentional and considering the choices you are making in your life. So for me, I would never have changed that decision. So if you're looking at your life and I'm like, no, if I had to make these same decisions again, I would do them over again, then it's time to change your mindset about how you're thinking about those choices. And growth is hard. And sometimes the things that you need are not necessarily the things that you want, but changing your mindset about what that means for you puts you back in kind of the driver's seat, and you have control over the thoughts you're having that may be bringing you joy and peace, or might be bringing you unrest and anxiousness.
Absolutely. With that triggers a lot in my journey as I have evolved as a mom of, I also have 4 kids, and I started working with my husband. He's an entrepreneur. And then I liked working. It actually filled the space that I was missing because I was doing the whole thing with Becky. And I want people to know that it's okay to do that. And that's part of that. Okay, let's rewrite your narrative. But a lot of times, what do you say? Because usually they feel bad because they've put themselves in some type of box that, well, working is not good unless they're all in school.
Right.
Working, or if I want to do things for myself or cultivate my own gifts and talents, that's selfish.
I think that putting ourselves in a box is a really, really common thing, especially mom guilt is just such a powerful and a real force. And so I really enjoy reading the books from Glennon Doyle. And one thing she says that really kind of helped to change my mindset about that is I try to think, I have 2 daughters and 2 sons, and I try to think of my daughters when they're in the place that I'm in, and what would I tell them? Because I think the very most unselfish thing you can do for your kids is make sure that you are healthy and you are fulfilled. I think sometimes, however, we will compare ourselves to people online. You'll see what other moms maybe in your space are doing. And like when we say, like, you know, girl bosses, that's amazing. That's totally amazing. But it's only amazing if it's actually going to bring you fulfillment, if it's going to bring you happiness. And so it's not just about accomplishing an ambition. It's about really honing in on what actually brings you peace, what actually brings you happiness, what is your voice, and bringing that most authentic voice into everything that you do.
When we are truly authentic, like you're saying, then that's actually the story we've been made to tell. Like, and that generates to other people, just like your story, which you were Cinderella, weren't you, Becky?
I was, yeah.
Yes, everybody's like, she was Cinderella because she
Yeah.
like Cinderella. But that was part of your journey and your process, and now you share it with other women. A lot of things that we think, oh, well, my story, it's not that great or it's not that awesome, but it is because it'll connect to other people. Um,
Yeah.
can you touch on that? Because you share and interview people all the time with your podcast,
Yeah.
all walks of life. So talk about like being comfortable with your specific journey story, I guess.
So I think you have to first identify like what is your journey story. And I love that you talk about boxes, because I think when we're even storytelling about ourselves, or when we're creating the thoughts about ourselves, we oftentimes do box ourselves in. And so for me, and I teach this in the audio course, which everyone will have a chance to get a taste of for free. But for me, I want to take it back to, I tell my clients, you take it back. What is your childhood memory where you feel totally free, totally fearless, totally just euphoric? And we've
Mhm.
all had a moment somewhere in our childhood, adolescence, high school, where we've had that feeling so just present. And I have them write about that experience in great detail, and then take from that what was the thing about that child in that moment that they absolutely just loved. And I
Mhm.
have found that as people go about that work, they're able to really hone in on what their view of their most complete self is, and their most free self, their most empowered self. And so once we have those characteristics kind of
Yeah.
narrowed down, we can cross-reference, okay, so where are you at today? And where are these traits in your story today? Um, I think oftentimes people, when you say like, okay, what are your traits? Well, I'm loving and I'm kind and I'm
Mhm.
compassionate and all the things people are supposed to be. One of my things is I'm really unafraid to be loud, which if I channel that through a place of hatred, becomes like obnoxious and raucous and just noise. But if I channel that through a place of love and acceptance, I become a voice that a lot of people can hear. I'm able to share truth more loudly and to guide people. And so I think really starting with those characteristics and discovering is less, I think, becoming, and more remembering, more really going back to your roots and figuring out what are those things that actually drive you, actually gives you a really clear picture of what you want to cultivate more of in your future.
Ooh, I love that thought, remembering what we were, because we have what we've done is we seem to like we're in this box, but we're like, this is Jessica pre-baby. This is Jessica now. Put on a different hat. I have
Right,
kids now, so I am not the same person. And
right.
that's unfortunately a thought that all moms do. We're like, can't have that hat on. I love the idea of remembering, because that's going to help us evolve into joining both, where you can be.
Right. Well, and what people are saying when they're saying that they feel lost or they feel misunderstood, what they're really saying is like, I don't actually know who I am, or the way that I'm showing up in my life, good or bad, doesn't feel true to me. It doesn't feel authentic to me. And I think the ultimate freedom and fulfillment comes from coming from a place of being truly authentic to who you are and being okay with that. Because I have a firm belief, there's no like damaged babies that come to this earth, right? Like we come in as we're small children, we are totally just so good at self-love and at self-acceptance. And so I feel like taking a step back, looking at who that person was, from maybe a step aside, is super, super effective, and a first step in really embracing the things that make you you. You know what else I think too, though, is that oftentimes that happens even now, where I'll find myself like, okay, well, this is business Becky, and then there's mom Becky. So even in the same day, I'm like, well, I need to go into this zone, when really that disaligns your life. It's good to have chunks of time for different activities, but they have to still be married and aligned
Mm.
behind the same core values. Otherwise, you're not going to be showing up authentically in any area of your life.
Mm. Ooh, yes, yes. So let's take it a step further. So they're like, let's just say, for example, they're like, I really like, oh, theater. I love music. And I have little ones or something. Or they have, their kids aren't all in school, or they are all in school. and they're like, I don't know how to do that anymore. What do you say to those women? Let's give them an example so that they really honestly can take this into action, which you will get. This is part of her freebie, is
Yes.
go up and tell your story,
Yes.
but kind of walk them through.
So I would ask yourself, and anyone that would say theater, like, I hear you. I grew up doing theater, and I remember having my first child and feeling like, man, I've been doing theater my whole life, and now that just doesn't feel like an option anymore, and it felt like a piece of me was dying. So instead of focusing on the theater thing, because that may or may not be attainable, I truly believe in your motherhood, you can do whatever you want. Sometimes you have to ask yourself, what am I willing to give up to make this happen? And that may or may not be something you're willing to do. But I would dig a little bit deeper, because oftentimes I would say that theater and wanting to do musical theater or whatever probably wasn't about the theater. It probably was more about how I felt when I was sharing a particular gift. Or maybe when I was doing theater, I felt more validated because people were visually seeing me. Like maybe I'm not feeling seen. And so oftentimes I would tell people to dig one layer deeper and ask yourself, like, what is it about that thing that brings you so much joy? And then you can start to figure out ways to implement that into your life. If it really is music and it's not so much the sharing, well, there's 100 ways you can implement that in your life. If it's more about the sharing and less about the music, there's 100 different ways to implement that in your life. It's just breaking it down and figuring out what is it about that that's really kind of setting your soul on fire.
Oh my goodness, where were you 12 years ago when I had my first? I tell you, Becky.
I was in the trenches with you, just not even knowing what to do.
Oh, seriously, because that's what we need to do, is take that layer back, like Becky is saying, because we literally make it too hard, like well, I can't do that, then fine, I'm giving up that goal. Now for you, because you did theater and music and you were Cinderella, is the podcast and speaking filling your cup in the way that those things did?
Yes, I would say that for the podcast, what I have realized is that the joy of it is not for me, that it's helping people is not my main joy. My main joy is that I am authentically sharing things that I feel inspired to share, that I think are important. And so do I love that it helps people? 100, yes, of course I love it, but that is not the driving force of what brings me joy in the podcast, which is great, because I think sometimes we look at, I work in social media and there's people who start and they're like, well, no one's showing up. Well, are you getting the joy from people showing up, or are you getting the joy from authentically sharing? And so you kind of have to frame it. And the way that I have framed it for me, that I have found to be true for myself, is that even if nobody shows up, I still would do it, because I want that record of the things that inspire me and the lessons I've learned, the legacy I'm leaving behind.
Oh man, I absolutely love this. Love the whole figuring out and recognizing your gifts and talents, really uncovering, doing the layers. Another big thing you talk about is making a life that you love, cultivating a good life. That's like your mantra on social media and the podcast thing. Where did that come from? Was this all in the same vein, or another venture that you had where that came from?
So I always had, I think my whole life, I've always been a writer. I've just only in the past probably 7 years actually started writing. I always had thoughts and inspiration in my head, or I had big dreams or goals or things that I thought I wanted to do. I just never was able to articulate that in a meaningful way. And so what was inspiration honestly became mental clutter, because I really wasn't taking any steps forward with any of it. And in order to figure out how to move forward, you generally have to take a step in the dark. And for me, that was writing. And that was a really effective way to kind of flush out how I felt about different aspirations, about inspiration. And I was having a conversation with my husband, and I was saying something like, wouldn't it be so cool if I could like have a talk show? I was just saying something ridiculous. And he said, well, you totally could. And I was like, okay, I totally can. And he said, no, you really totally could. Like you need to reverse engineer it and figure out how to get there. And I realized very quickly, And I truly believe this of anyone. Like the sky's the limit. You can do anything you want. You just have to reverse engineer and see if that's what you actually really want, number one, and figure out what you need to do to take steps today to get closer to that goal. So I hear from a lot of people. Actually, I was just at a little retreat and a friend said to me, I just want a radio show. I want to be a radio like talk show host. And I was like, yeah, you totally should do that. And she said, there's no way I can do that. I have kids in school, whatever. And I was like, well, no, you could do that. But what is it about being a radio show host that you think you'd love so much? And she said, I really love the open and authentic conversation, being able to discuss current events. And I said, well, what's another way that you could accomplish that? And so I kind of broke it down for her. And I was like, you literally could launch a podcast in 2 days and start doing this. If that's truly what you want, is to have that open, authentic conversation, build your own stage and stand on it. You can totally do a podcast. You can totally do whatever you want to do. And cultivating the very best life just means is reminding, especially women, you have choice in your life. You can choose to do whatever. There's no mom police or someone telling you what you have to do. My husband and I often joke, we don't need to be married to each other. The day that I was like, I could leave, I don't have to be here, was the day that I chose to be in my marriage, even with that much more conviction, because I never wanted out. But sometimes you can trap yourself by thinking you're not actually choosing what's going on in your life. And so recognizing that you are the boss of you, you have all the choices in the world. We are some of the most blessed women in the world. We live in the US. We have all these opportunities open to us. And really the only limits that you have are the ones that you set for yourself. Truly.
Okay, can we get like a little mic? This girl is on fire, man.
That is on my playlist of hype songs for sure.
Because Becky hit it on, like, this is why you need her in your pocket. And this is why I'm doing this, because we need to know that we just need to stop stopping ourselves, honestly.
Right.
Back the onion, figure out what you really like, figure out what is baby steps to get you to what you want, because the only person that is saying no is you. And I did that for years because I thought, well, no, my husband's going to school, he's becoming a doctor, oh, it's just more important, everything. No, that's horrible thinking.
Right.
But it was part of my journey, and I'm for it.
Totally. Yes.
So now tell us about this freebie that you're giving away, because I want them to know about this Show Up and Tell Your Story. Remember, ladies, you put your email address and your name in, and Becky will send you this amazing freebie. So tell us all about it.
Exactly. So if you go to beckyproudfit.com and subscribe to our newsletter, you are going to be sent a link to our course. It's called Live the Story You Want to Tell. And this is an audio course that my co-host Becky Higgins and I created. It is like 10 plus hours of audio. It's like that project that's like my life's work. Like I can die happy because this is out there. And essentially what we do in the introduction and first part of the course is teach you how to establish your why of what actually drives you. Free from you as a mother or wife, but just really isolating yourself into a strong, empowered, autonomous individual and figuring out where exactly you want to go and what it is exactly that you want. And so we are going to give you that first part of the course totally free, and it will be sent out in that email newsletter as a link you can click on and get started in that work. It's super exciting.
Awesome. So as we wrap up our interview today, we could honestly keep speaking with Becky the rest of the day. I know you ladies are busy. So in their first step, and I know you're going to cover this in the audio, but what do you recommend they do today, to help them be more confident in themselves, whether they want to stay at home, whether they want to work, whether they want to do the radio show, whatever they want to do, helping them become the woman that they want to be? So
I would remind you that you are already the woman that you need to be. It's not even about becoming. It's about giving yourself the grace and giving yourself the space to figure it out. So the number one thing that we teach in the course is establishing your why. And that doesn't mean like, oh, it's for my children. It's about separating yourself from all the external validators in our lives. So being a wife, being a mother, your career, whatever it is, separating yourself totally from that and breaking it down to see which human emotion really drives you forward. So the first time I did this exercise, there's a bunch of different options. So there's security, there's love, there's connection, creation, freedom, all kinds of different ones. Identity is another big one. And I remember the first time I did it and I was like, well, obviously love is the one. And in the back of my head, I thought, well, love's the right one because it's the right one. Like I should want it to be love. And the more that I kind of dug in, there's two ways to kind of quickly figure this out. Number one is, when is a time, separate from motherhood, separate from anything else, when is a time when you feel completely joyful and free? And the second is, what triggers you? What are you doing, or what triggers you to feel like anger and frustration? And usually if you kind of start on those two ends and work your way in, you'll figure out, and we'll take you through this in the course, but you'll figure out kind of what drives you. And so my driving force is freedom. And I was a little mad at myself. I was like, that feels selfish. That feels like not the right choice. But I recognize in my life that freedom actually is what brings me closest alignment to myself, closest alignment to who I feel I'm created to be. And so when I exercise and recognize freedom within my marriage, I am the best, most committed wife in the world. When I do the same thing with motherhood, the same result. When I do the same thing in business, when I'm free to be and do all the things that I want to, I really bring myself to the table. And so doing that, I think, is something every human being on the planet needs to do, because oftentimes we think, oh, if we had more time, if I just had more time. Well, you're going to have more time, and nothing's going to change, because time really is not the issue. It's about kind of cutting back, peeling back those cultural norms, maybe expectations, those boxes, and figuring out what makes you you. And you'll know when you figure it out. When you figure it out, you'll start to see, like I started to see freedom kind of present itself in all these areas of my life. And I'm able to recognize it now and cultivate that, which brings me more peace, more freedom, and more ability to be prepared to seize opportunities, to move forward professionally, and to choose the life that I want.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness, ladies. I am so excited that you're here, that you're receiving this content, because I'm going to do this exercise as well, because I want to make sure I'm doing the things that fill my cup, knowing what triggers me. So make sure you sign up for that freebie, because hello, that's amazing. Do it. As well as, this is only day one, people. We have 24 days of amazing speakers. So I'm
so amazing. This is such a cool thing you're doing. I love, one of the things I think as women all over the world is there's a common theme right now of women feeling the need to come into their own and to really shine with their unique talents and skills and bring them to the world, and whatever that means to you. And I think it's so cool to see all these women kind of rising up into that. And it's so awesome that people like you are creating resources like this, so that we can all kind of help each other as we work to accomplish that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Becky. Thank you for being here. As always, remember, share this with your friends, because everybody is needing this content. If they can't watch it today, they'll watch it another day. But share it via social media, email, whatever way, as well as a reminder to click the link so you get that free course from Becky. And we will see you again on the Just Own You Summit tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.